I'm not going to be helping them pick up women. I'm not going to be teaching them how to get women into bed with them. I'm going to be helping them live more fulfilling, connected lives.
Yes, yes, we need that. Oh my God, that is amazing. And guess what? The byproduct of that will be
Women will be happier too.
women will be
Everyone wins.
happier and they're going to be opening their doors and some other
And
things.
our legs.
And they're like, welcome to Come Talk with Amy, the podcast where sex isn't whispered about, it's talked about out loud. I'm Amy, your host and intimacy coach, here to spark raw, playful, and unfiltered conversations about relationships, desire, and everything in between. No shame, no scripts, just real talk about what really turns us on. Let's dive in. When you hear the phrase unbed men, what story does your brain jump to? Because for most people, it's incel, full stop. Today, we're interrupting that reflex. This episode is about men who aren't having sex, not because they're dangerous or entitled, but because they're lonely, underskilled, and carrying way more shame than anyone wants to admit. We're getting into the uncomfortable middle, the difference between struggling and blaming, between isolation and resentment. Labeling men as the problem is easy. Teaching connection is harder and way more effective. And to go there with me, I'm joined by Robyn Silber, a former Google engineer turned creator who's been clocking the patterns behind male loneliness, desire, and connection. She doesn't call, she doesn't catastrophize, and she doesn't default to fear-based labels. She names what's actually happening and why that matters. Let's get into it. Welcome, Robyn. So excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So, Robyn, I'm like obsessed since we met. We met at the house. I have to say, one of my recent guests I also met at the house. I feel like I'm kind of promoting them. I'm the house promoter here. But I remember our conversation, and you were just telling me about your journey and also how you want to start the support group for unbed men. And I'm like obsessed with your content online as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, what brought you on the journey of I need to move into this modern dating and intimacy space, and now is the time to speak up about it?
I've always been interested in the space, especially combining that I studied computer science, I worked in big tech. For a while, I was thinking maybe I wanted to build a dating app, but I realized I don't know if it's possible to build a dating app that doesn't profit off of misery. So I've always been interested in this space. And I built a bit of a following on various social media platforms. TikTok in general was built sharing my experiences working at Google. And a lot
Mhm.
of the people I became mutuals with are very influential in the gender or relationship space. So I had this amazing network that I was like, I'm not even building this alone. A lot of what I've been working on has been with the help of a lot of men that I care about, that care about me.
I love that. And how, like, because as a female in tech, that's such a unique position to be in. How do you feel like your background in engineering and tech contributes to your current process and path?
When I was working in tech, I was just surrounded by men. That wouldn't have been a problem. The problem was that there was this bitterness. How dare you be a hot woman and be in tech? And also, how dare you do things that I wasn't able to achieve? Because I think a lot of men really relied on having this really stable, what used to be a stable job, high paying job was their ticket into dating, into
Mhm.
finding a partner. And so many of the men that I worked with were partnered, and had they not had such a high-paying job, I doubt they would have been.
Interesting. What do you think is behind that?
I would say the feeling behind it was that the corporate world is really just a popularity contest for which men they want to see reproduce.
Interesting. Okay.
Just my theory. The only women I saw get promoted to leadership positions were women that were partnered and or had had kids. The men, they were also majority like partnered and a lot of them had kids, but if they were in leadership, they at least were partnered. So it seemed like there was this almost like a discrimination, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
just my own opinion of people who were unmarried, people who weren't having kids. And I don't know, I just felt like it was all kind of tied into the resentment that they felt towards a woman who's hot and able to be there and kind of undermining their ability to like get a partner.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. And are there any like specific DMs or confessions or conversations that you've had with men or in general that sparked your interest in moving into like working in sexual behavior, sexual health?
I wouldn't say it was one particular thing or like just a handful. I had a lot of feelings about men experiencing mass loneliness and having
Mm,
grown up with someone who had a father that was the opposite of what people think of when they think of a dad. My dad wasn't the breadwinner. My parents loved each other. They were faithful to each other. My dad was more of a caregiver than my mom was in some ways. You know, my mom was really in charge. She was the breadwinner. She made all the rules that I realized after hearing all these studies about how men want relationships more than women. Men benefit more from relationships than women do. Men want kids more than women do. That men weren't being honest about what was really going on. That we all have this idea from how the media portrayed women in relationships and how, you know, men would characterize women as the ball and chain, when in reality, that's not what was going on. That men wanted these relationships more, that you know, I started putting two and two together and hearing about the male loneliness crisis and hearing about men complain about not going on any dates. I'm like, well, yes, they're lonely, but they're also misplacing their loneliness into like, I don't have a partner. They're feeling unfulfilled in their life goals, but it's like they're not even ready to jump into a relationship because you can't learn how to date when you don't even have friends.
yes, yes. On that note, like what problems were you seeing or have you been seeing with men or male behavior that just aren't really talked about anywhere else?
I would say that the Venn diagram of men who aren't getting laid and men who don't have any friends is it's not exactly a circle, but it's not far off.
Okay.
So for, you know, if you're lonely, you don't get to have sex with someone because you're lonely. And that's not even the
Hmm.
cure. There are so many men in the manosphere. Are you familiar with the manosphere?
Can you explain it a little bit from your perspective?
Sure. So it refers to any of the ideologies of men hating women, feeling entitled to women, mistreating women. They're all rooted in hatred of women and not seeing women as equals. So things like the red pill movement, or there's other various colors of pills, like the black pill movement, or incels. They're all various ideologies or like sect of the manosphere. So I realized that not only was the majority of content for men who are struggling socially and or romantically really just coming from the manosphere, but the people who were addressing it, who weren't putting out hateful content, primarily all men, and they weren't autistic. And I don't know if this is fully accurate, but I had read somewhere that it's estimated that about 40% of men who identify as incels, which for those listening who aren't familiar with the term, means involuntary celibate. So someone who wants to have sex but isn't having sex because women won't sleep with him. But that 40% of incels have a formal autism diagnosis.
Okay.
So I realized that there's this huge gap in content for men struggling in that there isn't someone who's also autistic properly addressing their needs, and not necessarily just autistic but neurodivergent in general. So being ADHD and autistic, you know, who better understands the struggles socially than someone who's already been through them and
Yeah,
overcame a lot of them?
absolutely, absolutely. And so you went into like the definition of incel. What about the definition of unbed men? And how do the two differ, if there is a difference?
So unbed men is kind of like a play on unwed men, but it's really just men who aren't getting laid. And the difference between a man who isn't getting laid and an incel is that an incel has to identify as an incel. It's identification with a particular ideology that falls under the manosphere. And the difference is that someone who just isn't getting laid isn't sealing their own fate. They're not saying, no one's ever going to sleep with me, woe is me. They're just maybe struggling socially or romantically. Whereas an incel is someone who feels entitled to women and they're sealing their fate. They're like, no one's ever going to sleep with me. And they're not actually trying to fix the problem either.
Going back to unbed men, have you noticed any patterns in loneliness, shame, emotional isolation, any other patterns that stand out in this population?
A lot of the problems are really emotional, social, interpersonal skills and a lack of development of them. There's this cycle of shame that men just can't break out of that begins in infancy. I've been reading about in a book called I don't want to talk about it. It's about like the history of depression in men, basically, or the legacy of depression in men, written by a therapist, Terrence Real. And he talks about how in childhood, girls are harmed in childhood through disempowerment, and boys, it's through disconnection or detachment, where they learn to detach from their feelings, from their wants and needs, and then from other people. And that it happens when they're really young. Shame is really a big part of this process where men are shamed into masculinity. They're hazed, basically. It's a hazing ritual. And I find that men get so stuck in this loop and then also in their failure to attract a partner, they continuously get stuck in this shame. And it comes out when you interact with these men because there's this desperation where they don't even view you as a person, they're viewing you as something that they want to acquire. And in order to really break out of it, it really requires men to stop seeing every woman that they meet as a potential love interest. If you don't have any women friends and you want to date, the first step is to put dating on the back burner, come back to it after you learn to make friends.
Oh my God, shout that from the rooftops.
Yes, and also another point about the shame is that you need to stop caring so much about what other men think about your masculinity. And if you want to care what people think, care what women think if you want to attract a woman.
So huge, right? And it's like often the other way, right? Men are really wanting the approval of other men instead of
Yeah.
women.
It's like, is my partner hot? It's like, you don't even have one.
Yeah.
You should care about that. And you should care that she likes you.
Right, exactly. Is there a connection in your mind and with unbed men of lack of sex versus lack of connection? And how do those intertwine?
I would say the men that my content has spoken to that it's resonated with aren't men even going on dates. They're not connecting sexually at all, period. I would say the majority of men that have shared their experiences or reached out in the DMs, they're not just struggling romantically, they're struggling socially. So they're not connecting, period. And they're really confusing, sex with connection. And not to say that you don't experience intimacy with sex, but the purpose of connection is to build a closeness based on intimacy and vulnerability. And intimacy doesn't necessarily have to mean sex.
Yes, yes, which is so huge. And I feel like for bros or like that masculine, it's sex, 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 right? Like that's what's been fed. And we see that in the way that like pop culture is packaged to us, right? And to men.
If you call yourself an alpha, you are not going to get laid.
Yes. Yeah. And then like going back to incels, because you were mentioning how incels, like it's that sense of entitlement, right? Because I feel like a lot of people will label them unbed men and incels together. How would you like further differentiate that?
Someone who is an incel becomes an incel when they call themselves one. So you don't become an incel just by the nature of not getting laid, is really the big difference. It's
Mm,
really the like sealing in of your own fate and the desperation, but also thinking that you're entitled to it. It's really an ideology that you have to subscribe to that no one else can identify, kind of like religion. No one gets to tell you what your religion is. It's the same thing with being an incel. You have to choose to be that.
it's like an identity. And what do you think, or what have you noticed that people get from like stepping into that definition of I am an incel?
I guess they're really looking for identity and community because it does come with community. Leaving the incel world, the manosphere, I think would be hard for a lot of these men because it might be their one source of community. The thing that the manosphere and incel communities get right is that they validate men in their suffering, that
Mhm.
they have this disconnection, this detachment that has been ingrained in them since they were children, where they were denied the full range of emotion and emotional development and the skills ultimately that you need to be able to connect to other people. So they do a good job of validating men in their suffering. The problem is just really the direction that they then take it in.
Would you say that all unbed men are really looking for the ability to like knock down that shame and be vulnerable and be able to be held in that vulnerability.
Yes, and I realize that a big reason why they like the way that you get their attention isn't by being like, oh, support group for lonely men, because that just doesn't resonate. It doesn't sell.
Yeah.
But support group for men not getting laid, it's the same community, but it's what resonates with them because ultimately they don't see any other outlet of vulnerability other than sex
Yep.
because they weren't taught to have those big feelings. They weren't taught how to sit with their feelings and regulate them and connect with someone else. Because ultimately, a connection is not based on logic, it's based on you being able to express your emotions to someone else and them being able to receive your message and understand you, and then the same in reverse for them to you.
Yes, God, that's so good. That's so fucking good. I'm curious because you mentioned the disservice that dating apps can do, right? For this population, for men in general. Like, I'm wondering how dating apps, isolation, and these changes in gender norms are impacting men.
I'm reading a book by Liz Plank called For the Love of Men, and she talks about how there have been various points in time in which the job market has really changed and how we went from more of, I believe it was more of like a industrial type of economy to a more service-based, and there was a huge leaving of men from the workforce. For a lot of men, being able to get a wife is really the incentive that they have for working. So we're seeing so many men
Mm.
leaving the job market and not even participating, not even trying to find a job because they don't see a reason to work if they can't get a wife. And then on top of it, a lot of men do feel so emasculated when their partner makes more money than them because they put all of their worth in providing. They see it as the one contribution they can make to the relationship because they don't have the emotional social development. So they're outsourcing that to their partners. And then, well, I bring in the paycheck. This is how I'm able to get access to sex, is basically what it's looked at. So, with men feeling like women are outshining them, which they are in many ways. There are more women graduating from colleges than men. They don't know how else they can participate in partnership.
I often go thinking of Disney princesses and talking about like the Disney narrative. I often bring that up in the context of how that has shaped women, right? And how they perceive relationships. But it's the same way with men, right? They need to find a wife, they need to be the provider. Like,
They are. And you know what's interesting about the whole emasculation thing that you brought up is even when a woman becomes the breadwinner in her home, the man doesn't necessarily take on more chores around the
yes.
house. That women pick up so many extra hours. I believe it's like 7 hours on average per week when they get married of housework. The men's load, decreases. Honestly, one of the sexiest things a man can do is learn how to keep his home.
Yes, you heard it here. And that is like, talk about foreplay. A man cleaning the house, doing the groceries, like, bringing home the groceries or running errands. Like, that is so fucking hot. Like, that will get women wet and dripping and ready to go.
I often don't know whether, because I identify somewhere on the asexual spectrum, things like that aren't normal for men. I don't always know if it's like, am I fully asexual, or is it that we live in a world that has like turned me off from the people that I'm attracted to physically? I go to a guy's place and I see his bathroom and I'm just like, I'm dry.
Bathrooms. Yeah.
Or you just like getting like dirty sheets, and it's like, no, absolutely not. Or he
Hmm.
opens his mouth and he shows that he has no understanding of how emotions work. Again, no, dry.
It goes back to what you were saying with like, the focus should be for the het cis men. What is the woman wanting? Like, how can I please her? Like, instead of trying to impress the men.
Yes.
Okay, so like everything you're saying, I'm so convinced of the need for the support group for unbed men. Can you like dive in, tell us like how you're curating that? What is that going to look like? What specific needs? And also tell us a little bit more about the men who are knocking on your door when it comes to the thirst for your content and that you see being part of this support group.
So the men are mostly neurodivergent and they struggle not just romantically, but also socially. A lot of them report that they
Mhm.
don't have close friends or any friends. So it's people really starting from the beginning socially. A lot of them, breaks my heart. They'll say things like, I'm autistic, I'm just genetically, it's impossible for me to get a partner. And it's so sad reading that because there's nothing wrong with you genetically. It's that you weren't born with the instruction manual. I would understand because I don't feel like I was either. It didn't come naturally. I had to keep trying. But it's really a matter of putting yourself out there and having as many experiences as you can because you learn these skills by trying, by messing up and trying again with other people. And you have to be able to take the rejection. So the support group is really going to debunk a lot of the limiting beliefs that men have internalized since their childhood that hold them back, that make them unattractive to women, not just romantically, but even just platonically. So things like men are logical and women are emotional. Logic and emotion are not mutually exclusive. Sometimes your reaction emotionally is built from logic, but I would say logic's not even the right word. I would say rational is really a more appropriate word. Just having studied logic, it's always funny when men will like try to one up me on logic. And it's like logic is a formal, field of study. And having degrees in mathematics and computer science and philosophy, which the logic courses were in the philosophy department, it's irrational to me when men say things like that. But also when men say that, it's not a flex. You're not giving off some desirable quality that women are like, ooh, I love it when a man's logical. Like, that's not anything. If anything, you're letting everyone know that you actually have no emotional literacy, you have no emotional skills or understanding, and that you just kind of rebrand it all as logical.
Mm.
So, it'll be like debunking things like that, but really just giving men a space where they have to practice talking about their feelings. Because that's really the thing is, I know that they don't lack feelings because anger is the one feeling they're allowed to
Yes.
experience. And that's a feeling, and not a rational one either, or a logical one. Really just giving them a space where they can practice. Also, a space where they can share their experiences practicing socializing, get feedback from someone who's also autistic. I think a lot of the information that's out there, it's very one-sided. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of a thing like I think it's called like the bird theory, where the idea is your partner says to you, oh, I saw a bird today. The idea is you're making a bid for connection. And
Okay.
the advice that is given is that you want to take the bid for connection because you don't want to be passing up the opportunity to connect with your partner. And while that's great advice for a certain portion of the population, I would say it's not useful advice when you're dating a neurodivergent person or you are neurodivergent, because often with neurodivergent people, there's this tendency to overshare. And it gets to a point where you're overwhelming, you're suffocating your partner. So the advice wouldn't be to make constant bids for connection or to accept every bid for a connection. It's to, evaluate, hey, how can I be more intentional with my bids for connection? And also, how can I set boundaries when my partner is oversharing and it's making me uncomfortable?
And understanding like our partners and our own makeup and what we need and what we desire in that too. And well, yeah, when you were talking about the bird, I have ADHD, so I'm definitely neurodivergent as well. I'm like, what color is the bird? What was the bird doing? All of these things are coming in my mind is to say or talk about the bird that you saw or ask about it. So yeah, I totally get that.
I appreciate though that you wanted to make a bid for connection with me. So
There
that
you
was the
go.
most important thing.
I love that. I love it. God, this is so needed and so huge. I'm so excited to continue following your journey with this and seeing how it unfolds. I'm curious too, like opening up the floodgates of emotion and building a community. Because you mentioned incels, like they're looking for community too, right? And so, how are you hoping to or aiming to keep your support group non-incel?
I realized that no one was addressing men who aren't getting laid who don't hate women.
Yeah.
So I realized that there was this huge gap. And when I put content out for that audience, that was who was showing up in my comments. So I don't think that my content is really even attracting incels, but also by nature of their ideologies, they wouldn't want to take advice from a woman because they don't view women as people. So, they wouldn't be interested in that. Then also, I would hope that for men who are incels, but who my message is resonating with, I want to give them incentive to abandon their incel ideologies. I want them to realize that there are other options. There are people creating content that is useful, that isn't generic pickup artist type of information, or there's something different being a woman who dates men, who has dated a lot of men, who has slept with a lot of men, giving them information than just some other guy giving them information.
Yes, absolutely. Because you can walk the talk. Or, I mean, like, you understand it from the female perspective, right? Of who they're trying to get into bed with. And also your unique perspective of being one neurodivergent, two working in and a lot of, men who fall into this category too. Like, so huge, so huge, so huge. What do you like foresee and what will be like a success story for people walking away in your group?
Men making friends, men feeling connected, feeling less hopeless. I'm not going to be helping them pick up women. I'm not going to be teaching them how to get women into bed with them. I'm going to be helping them live more fulfilling, connected lives.
Yes, yes, we need that. Oh my God, that is amazing. And guess what? The byproduct of that will be
Women will be happier too.
women will be
Everyone wins.
happier and they're going to be opening their doors and some other
And
things.
our legs.
And they're like, I was going to say that.
I beat you to it. I figured, I picked up on it. That's the thing is, I want men to succeed in this way.
Yeah.
Women want to partner with men. They're not partnering with them because they're so dissatisfied. This is just one of the first times in history where we've reached a point where women have caught up. We're gaining rights. We're seeing what the effect of that is. And at no other point in history have women been able to say, I'm going to opt out because I don't need a man to survive. And I feel like we're seeing the pushback of that. For instance, mass layoffs, women have been overrepresented in layoffs. And I often feel like it is a push to get women to have to partner with men again. That's not the solution to this. That's not how men come back to the table. They do it by working on themselves, not by pushing women out of jobs. And it kind of comes full circle to this, the idea of that we spoke about in the beginning was that men saw me being in that position
Yes.
as a threat to their relationship status.
Yeah. And like, I love this too, because bringing that like as a success too is for men not to feel that, to allow them to unpack these societal narratives and be like, we can coexist and cheer each other on and succeeding, right? And that in no way harms you or your masculinity.
You don't have to be the breadwinner, ultimately. You don't
Yeah.
have to fill these outdated roles of masculinity. Women would rather you be emotionally intelligent, a good lover, than provide, because so many of us have our own sources of income that we don't need you to do that. So when you fall back onto that and you're like, oh, I'm not worthy because I don't have enough money, it's signals that you don't have all the other skills that you need. It's really a skill gap
Mhm.
issue for men.
Yeah. And what do you feel just from the skills perspective? Again, non-negotiables or certain skills that you feel like, yes, we want you to. You mentioned a lot of them already, but give us the list.
Emotional maturity, emotional regulation. I really like shared values, which isn't necessarily a skill, but being able to keep the house, not even about help, because I feel like help implies that it's someone else's responsibility. I would say that keeping your own home. I don't want to necessarily ever live with a partner again because I just find it ruins the sex life.
Yes.
I've been dating someone for a year now, and I like that we are taking it slow and that we maintain separate residences. It's nice to go over to his place and it be clean every time. Him having a place that I want to go back to, and I don't have to get my place all messy and having him over. I know that his place is going to be clean. I really like it when a man listens and he remembers the things I say to him. Just being someone who cares, not trying to dominate is really it. I am very inspired by Bell Hooks, and I love her belief that love and domination can never coexist, in that you can't have, and I'm not talking about like in the bedroom. I'm talking about, yeah, that's separate. We'll leave that separate. But I'm talking about like in the relationship, you can't have a leader and a follower in a partnership. That's by definition not what a partnership is. It's, a loving relationship is two people coming together to mutually enrich a connection built on, intimacy and vulnerability.
Well, just to add to that, like meeting each other there, right? Like not assuming that the woman is going to take on all of the emotional labor, right? And like that care piece too, like taking care of themselves. And I was thinking when you were speaking about a recent guest that I had, who's a pleasure dom, Sir Marvelous, and he often talks about his dungeon and how it's every part
of that dungeon is meticulously curated to be there for the comfort of the female, right? Of the women. Like, and it's really the hot towels or, like just the cleanliness. And it's very curated in that way to make women feel safe and to make them feel seen and cared for, which I just think is beautiful. And I'm like, yes, please, for all of the men to create that. How beautiful.
If a man who is having the space to dominate women is thinking about those things, what does it say about the men who aren't trying to dominate women and their space and they're not able to curate that?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing is like, that's why he's so successful because he's like cared so much for and curated a space in an environment that women feel totally willing to just like let go. Right. And I'm like, yes, for all of the men to get there.
Feeling safe is such an important part of it. And
Hmm.
it's not something that comes by, hitting on every woman. It's really listening to them, really understanding women and not trying to sleep with every single woman as well.
Yes. What do you see like as people have been reaching out to you and relating to your content? Like, what do you see as the biggest green flag in people who start the unbed men that start doing this work?
Their willingness to take advice from someone. It's not about me trying to tell you what to do. It's that you recognize that there is some deficit or some need, some lack, and that you're willing to try something new.
Yes, yeah. And not feeling like that is in any way an attack, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, like it's feedback and something to work with.
Mhm. Also, I just say it all coming from a place of love and experience. This is really how, I feel so deeply about men. I obviously love men so much for me to want to do something like this. And it's a reflection of the beautiful relationships that I have with men. My dad, he and I were best friends, and he was really the inspiration behind it because so many men aspire to be a dad, but they don't aspire to raise their kids.
Hmm.
And that is one element of it. And then I have all these these beautiful platonic friendships with men that I care about, who care about me, who show up for me. Two of the three people who took care of me after I had surgery, which I recently had a hysterectomy, were my guy friends, my platonic guy friends. And, so obviously I love men.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that you started this conversation by talking about like your foray into wanting to create content for unbed men, to set up the support group really did come out of your love for men. And I like really appreciate that you've taken it full circle and brought us there at the end as well, like emphasizing that because I think that that's so, so important. I am so fucking excited for you to put this support group in place and all of the amazing people, the amazing men that are going to come through your doors and get to experience this transformation and like make the world a fucking better place. Like, I love it. I'm so,
Thank
so
you.
excited. Yes. Okay, before we wrap up, we love to come to completion here at Come Talk with Amy, which is like a rapid fire round. How does that feel?
Sounds good.
Yes. Okay. So, Robin, what is the most overrated sex advice online?
That dick size is important. I would
Mm,
say that we put too much emphasis on big dicks. It's not even, I guess, really sex advice, but that every woman wants a big dick.
hmm.
I personally would prefer average to big, so it doesn't necessarily feel good just because you have a bigger dick, and that I wish more men wouldn't be so self-conscious and insecure about their dick size.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like the dick size is again that like bro to bro, like that came from the male comparing themselves to the other male. It's not coming from what the woman wants or what is important to the female.
I'm sure women have only added fuel to the fire. It's not like a standard I mean, men wanna have a big dick because they wanna feel like they're conquering. They
Mm,
wanna feel like they're, "Oh, she's not gonna be able to walk tomorrow." You should want her to have pleasure, not to like, for her bottom to hurt when she sits
it shouldn't
down.
be pain.
Yeah, it's like they wanna leave their mark in some way and show every other man that he was there, like
Yep.
dog peeing on a tree.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're out with that, out with the olds and with the new.
Mhm.
Absolutely. All right. Question number two, soft dominance or soft masculinity?
Ooh, pass.
All right, fair enough. Plead the fifth, plead the fifth. Okay, your biggest ick in dating.
Not giving me the opportunity to initiate the interactions. So
Mm,
over texting, it's like often men want to show that they're interested, but they don't realize they're subconsciously trying to exert dominance as well.
yeah.
Match my energy. In the beginning, yes, you should lead in some ways. I like that. Because I like that, that's why you should lead in some ways. Book the date, pay for the first date, follow up with me. But after a certain point, I should be initiating interactions just as much as you should be.
I love that. Yes, 1,000%. Okay, so one thing men think is sexy that is absolutely not sexy.
Something that we spoke about earlier, but that calling themselves, branding themselves as logical, it's really just an indication that they lack emotional maturity and development.
Boom, mic drop. All right, most underrated intimacy skill.
Being a good listener, asking questions, inquiring, being curious.
Yeah.
Curiosity is so sexy.
Curiosity did not kill the cat. Curiosity made that cat wet and dripping. I'm kind of proud of myself for just coming up with that.
That was so
Um,
good.
that might end up being a little carousel on my Instagram. Okay, so dry spell cure, emotional growth, or better technique.
Emotional growth. I would say for someone who's already emotionally grown, they could work on their technique, but you're not even going to get to a point where you get to show off your technique if you haven't done the emotional work.
Yes, you need that foundation. So, so huge. Okay, last question. One thing you wish women admitted about desire.
That we experience it just as much as men. Men don't have a monopoly on sexual desire, but we do get turned off probably more frequently than men do.
God, so true. Oh my God, Robyn, this has been fabulous. Like, I am so excited for our listeners to weigh in on all of the goodness that Robyn has dropped. So please slide in our DMs or leave a comment on this episode letting us know, like, what did you take away? Like, I want to know your biggest takeaways. Robyn, before we sign off, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram up until I launch at some point in the near future. I'm recovering from surgery right now, so I'm a bit slow. I am deprogrammer on Instagram, except the last E is a period.
Okay, awesome. And we'll definitely put that in the show notes. Robyn, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for our listeners for listening in. As always, remember to masturbate, lubricate, and get ate. And thank you for coming. Please come again, and come again. That's all for today, lover. Remember to masturbate, lubricate, and get ate. If you liked this episode, share with a friend, like, subscribe, and as always, thank you for coming. Please come again, and come again.